"You'll never stop supporting us," my brother mocked. "You have 30 days to figure out your finances," I said coldly. 7 months later, they called me from a Motel 6. I was 23 when I became the head of our household. Not by choice, but by necessity. One minute I was a young guy with entry-level pay and big dreams. The next, I was shouldering a mortgage, utilities, and the weight of two adults who would spend the next 6 years draining me dry. For 6 years, I've been paying my mother and brother's mortgage, utilities, groceries, and more. Last month, I finally stopped. Now they're calling me from a Motel 6, begging to come home. But there is no home anymore, and I'm not sure I care. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm writing this because I need to know if I've finally gone too far. Dad's heart attack came without warning. One day he was mowing the lawn, the next he was gone. Mom, Laura, hadn't worked in over 20 years. My younger brother Tyler was in his second year of college, with no job skills and zero ambition. I had just started at Meridian Logistics, making barely enough to cover my own apartment and student loans. Dad left some life insurance, but not enough. The policy would cover expenses for maybe 6 months. Someone had to keep the lights on after that. "Just until I get back on my feet," Mom promised, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She'd stopped crying by then. The numbness had set in. "I'll find something part-time." "And I'll get a campus job," Tyler added, though his expression suggested he'd rather eat glass. At first, I didn't mind. We were grieving. We needed each other. I moved back into my childhood bedroom to save on rent, picked up weekend shifts, and funneled every spare dollar into keeping our family afloat. It was supposed to be temporary. It never was. 3 months after Dad died, Tyler totaled his car. He'd been texting while driving, lucky to walk away with just a broken arm. The insurance rates skyrocketed. I took a second job stocking shelves at a liquor store to cover the difference. "It's just temporary, James," Mom assured me, squeezing my shoulder, "until Tyler gets back on his feet." 6 months in, Mom still hadn't looked for work. Her excuses evolved with impressive creativity. First it was grief, then anxiety, then her bad back that never stopped her from playing tennis with her friends every Wednesday. When I pushed her on it, the waterworks started. "Your father would be so disappointed," she'd say, dabbing at tears that seemed to materialize on command. "He always took care of this family." The guilt would hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. I'd back down, work another double shift, and try to ignore the growing resentment burning a hole in my chest. Meanwhile, Tyler dropped out of college after his third year. "It's not for me," he shrugged, as if we hadn't just wasted thousands on his education. He cycled through a series of jobs, each one beneath him somehow. Cashier at Target, too boring. Barista at Starbucks, too early in the morning. Data entry at Dad's old firm, too repetitive. He'd work somewhere for 2 weeks, decide it was beneath him, and quit without notice. Then he'd lounge around the house playing video games until Mom nagged him into applying somewhere else. Despite contributing exactly zero to the household, Tyler never seemed to go without. Latest iPhone? Check. Designer clothes? Check. Weekend trips with friends? Check. All while I wore the same 3 pairs of jeans until they developed holes. The numbers were staggering. $1,800 monthly mortgage, $400, $600 in utilities, $500 in groceries, more when Tyler's friends raided our fridge, plus car insurance, property taxes, home repairs, and the countless loans that were never repaid. Over $150,000 in 6 years, money I could have used for my own home, my own future. I tried having the hard conversations. God knows I tried. "Mom, I can't keep doing this," I said one night, spreadsheets spread across the kitchen table. "Look at these numbers, I'm drowning." She looked at the papers like they were written in hieroglyphics. "You're doing so well at your job, though. That promotion really helped, and it's not like you have a family to support." That was the real kicker. I couldn't have a family because I was too busy supporting them. Relationships fizzled when partners realized my family would always come first, not by choice, but by financial necessity. I canceled dates to cover Tyler's car payment. Missed weekend getaways to fix the leaking roof. Put my life on perpetual hold because I couldn't save a dime. Tyler was even worse when confronted. "Dude, chill. I'm between opportunities right now. My buddy might hook me up with something in sales next month." Next month never came. I was working 60 hours a week while they complained about my absence. I was surviving on energy drinks and 4 hours of sleep while they criticized my mood. I was having panic attacks in the bathroom at work while they planned vacations I'd end up financing. The irony, They said I reminded them of Dad, the ultimate compliment in their eyes. The comparison made me want to scream. Dad provided for his family because they were his responsibility. I was providing for grown adults who saw me as their personal ATM. My 29th birthday fell on a Thursday. I pulled a double shift because we were short-staffed, then stayed late to finish quarterly reports. No one at work knew it was my birthday. I hadn't mentioned it. I drove home at 10 p.m., exhausted but holding onto a small hope that maybe Mom had remembered. Maybe there'd be a cake, or at least acknowledgement of the day. The house was lit up like Christmas, bass thumping through open windows. For a second, I thought they'd thrown me a surprise party. The thought brought tears to my eyes. Maybe they did care. Then I saw the cars lining the street. Tyler's friends. The same ones who ate my food, drank my beer, and never so much as offered a thank you. I found them in the living room. Tyler and 5 of his buddies sprawled across furniture I'd paid for, playing the new PlayStation 5 I hadn't even known he'd purchased. Empty pizza boxes littered the coffee table. Premium bottles of liquor, the kind I couldn't afford to buy for myself, stood half empty on every surface. Mom sat in the corner, laughing at something on her phone. She glanced up when I entered, her smile fading slightly. "Oh, you're home early," she said, as if 10 p.m. after a 14-hour day was early. Something inside me shifted. A tectonic plate of rage and resentment that had been building pressure for 6 years finally slipped. "Do you guys even realize how much I sacrifice for you?" My voice came out quiet, too quiet. The room fell silent, the game paused. Mom sighed dramatically. "Oh, here we go again with the martyr act." Tyler snickered, not even looking away from the screen. "It's not like you're struggling, you make good money." "I make good money that I never get to spend on myself," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "Do you know what today is?" Blank stares. "It's my birthday, my 29th birthday. Did either of you remember?" Tyler shrugged. "We were gonna say something tomorrow, chill out." One of his friends, a perpetual mooch named Dave, had the audacity to laugh. That laugh broke something in me. The final thread of obligation sliced clean through. "I'm done," I said, my voice suddenly steady. "As of today, I'm not paying for anything else. Not the mortgage, not the utilities, not your car insurance. Nothing." That got their attention. Tyler paused his game. Mom put down her phone. "You don't mean that," Mom said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "I've never meant anything more in my life." Tyler laughed then, a sharp, dismissive sound that cut deeper than he knew. "You'll never stop supporting us. You're too guilty, too responsible. Dad would be so disappointed if you abandoned us." Mom's laugh of agreement was the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. They were right, I would never stop unless I made the decision right then and there. In that moment, looking at their smug, entitled faces, something inside me just broke. All the guilt, all the obligation, all the misplaced responsibility. Gone. "We'll see," I said quietly. I walked upstairs to my room while they resumed their party. I packed 2 suitcases with essentials, clothes, important documents, my laptop. I transferred my portion of the joint account to my private account. I wrote a note with explicit instructions that I would not be providing any further financial support, effective immediately. They were still laughing when I walked out the door. I checked into a Holiday Inn that night. The irony wasn't lost on me. Finally spending money on myself felt like a criminal act. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, waiting for the guilt to crush me. It never came. Instead, I felt hollow, then light, then something close to peace. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't responsible for anyone but myself. The next morning, I found a small studio apartment and paid 3 months' rent up front. I canceled every automatic payment tied to their expenses. I called each utility company and removed my name. I met with a lawyer who confirmed I had no legal obligation to support my adult mother and brother. Then I sent Mom an email detailing my decision with clear timelines. "You have 30 days to figure out your finances. The mortgage is due on the 1st. Utilities will be shut off if not paid by their respective due dates. I've left enough groceries for 2 weeks." The response was immediate and overwhelming. My phone exploded with notifications. "You can't do this to us." Yes, I could. After everything I've done for you, what exactly had she done for me lately? "You're just like your father, always thinking about money." Dad had worked himself to death providing for ungrateful people. So yes, maybe I was like him after all. The tactics evolved over days. First came rage, then tears, then bargaining, then threats. Mom claimed she'd tell the entire family I was abandoning her. I told her to go ahead. I had bank statements stretching back years. Tyler's approach was more direct. "You're dead to me," followed by, "Can I just get enough for this month's car payment?" Extended family got involved. Flying monkeys deployed to pressure me back into line. Aunt Kathy called to tell me I was breaking my mother's heart. Uncle Steve sent long paragraphs about family obligation. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my character. I stopped answering calls, changed my number, went to work, came home to my tiny apartment, and slept through the night for the first time in years. No anxiety about bills, no dread about tomorrow, just quiet. The consequences hit faster than even I expected. Week 1, the internet was shut off. I know because Tyler messaged me from a friend's phone, raging about how he couldn't even game online. Week 3, Mom's car was repossessed. She left a tearful voicemail claiming she couldn't get to doctor's appointments. She didn't have any doctor's appointments. Month 2, the first foreclosure notice arrived. This triggered a new wave of panic. Mom texted that she was in the hospital with chest pains. I called the hospital directly. They had no record of her. Every plea, every manipulation tactic, every lie strengthened my resolve. Every time I felt myself wavering, I remembered that laugh, the casual cruelty of it, the entitlement, the absolute certainty that I would continue to set myself on fire to keep them warm. They showed up at my workplace on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in a meeting when security called. Mom and Tyler were in the lobby causing a scene. Mom was crying. Tyler was yelling, making a spectacle designed to embarrass me into compliance. I asked security to escort them out and went back to my meeting, hands shaking but voice steady. Later, I sent a final email. "Do not contact me again. If you come to my home or workplace, I will file for a restraining order." That night, I cried for the first time since walking out. Not for them, but for the family we could have been. For the support that should have flowed both ways. For the 6 years I'd never get back. 3 months passed in blessed silence. I was promoted at work. All that extra energy previously spent managing their chaos now channeled into my career. I started dadding again. I began therapy to unpack the guilt that still occasionally ambushed me in quiet moments. My cousin Jamie, the only family member who understood my position, gave me occasional updates. The foreclosure process was moving forward. Mom and Tyler had briefly moved in with my grandmother until she'd kicked them out for borrowing money from her purse. They were now staying with a distant relative in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. Tyler had been forced to sell his PlayStation and designer clothes. Mom had pawned her jewelry. The reality they'd avoided for years had finally caught up with them. "For what it's worth," Jamie told me over coffee, "people are starting to see your side. The stories they're telling don't add up, and everyone knows you supported them for years." I nodded but found I didn't really care about family vindication anymore. For the first time since Dad died, I was saving for my future instead of bankrolling their present. I'd started a 401k. I was researching first-time home buyer programs. I was living my life. 7 months after walking out, I received a text from an unknown number. "The house is gone. We're at Motel 6. Please help us." The old James would have rushed to rescue them. The new James felt a cold wave of something between satisfaction and sorrow. They'd finally hit rock bottom, the place they'd needed to reach for years. I didn't respond, but I asked Jamie to check on them. She reported back that Tyler had finally gotten a job at an Amazon warehouse. The work was grueling, the pay barely enough to cover their motel room. Mom had applied for government assistance. They were, for the first time in years, facing the consequences of their actions. "They're selling the victim's story hard," Jamie said. "But they're finally doing what they should have done years ago, taking responsibility." A year passed. I bought a small condo, started a relationship with someone who respected boundaries, built a life that was wholly mine. I was grabbing coffee at a shop across town when I saw him. Tyler, dressed in a warehouse uniform, looking older and thinner than the last time I'd seen him. He noticed me before I could decide whether to leave. Our eyes met. A year's worth of unspoken words hung in the air between us. He approached slowly, as if expecting me to bolt. "Hey," he said, the single syllable carrying the weight of our collapsed relationship. "Hey," I replied. We stood in awkward silence until the barista called his name. He grabbed his coffee and hesitated, then gestured to an empty table. Against my better judgment, I sat. "You look good," he said, and sounded like he meant it. Thanks, how are you? He shrugged. Getting by, working at the fulfillment center, it's hard, but it's something. And Mom, living with Aunt Susan, got a part-time job at the grocery store. He stared into his coffee. She's not happy about it. The understatement almost made me laugh. Of course she wasn't happy about it. Working had never been part of her plan. You were right, Tyler said suddenly, the words rushing out like he'd been holding them back. We took advantage. I took advantage. He swallowed. I didn't know how to stop. It was so easy to let you handle everything. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was the closest thing to acknowledgement I'd ever gotten from him. I should go, I said, standing. My break's almost over. Tyler nodded. James, he called as I turned to leave. Dad would have been proud of you setting boundaries. He always said you were the strong one. I froze, tears threatening. Trust Tyler to find the one thing that could still reach me. Take care of yourself, I said, and walked away. I don't know if we'll ever really be a family again. The damage runs too deep, the patterns too established. Mom still believes I abandoned them. Tyler is only beginning to understand the magnitude of their exploitation. But as I drove back to my condo, my space, bought with my money, filled with my things, I realized something important. I'd spent 6 years trying to be the perfect son, the perfect brother, the perfect provider. I'd almost lost myself in the process. Sometimes being a good son means refusing to be a doormat. Sometimes love means walking away. And sometimes the most important person to save is yourself. They're still struggling, still living paycheck to paycheck. Part of me feels guilty, but a larger part recognizes that their struggle now is healthier than their parasitic comfort before. They're finally living in reality, not the consequence-free fantasy I funded for too long. As for me, I'm living for myself now. And for the first time in my adult life, that feels exactly right.